Good morning, everybody. I know the thumbnail is a little bit crazy today. It says, don't get sued. Hope I got your attention. What are we going to be covering today? I'm going to be breaking down 8 ways that real estate agents can avoid being sued. Why did I frame it that way? Well, because a lot of real estate agents watch this channel, but I'm also aware that a lot of consumers watch this channel as well. Meaning, if you're a consumer that has ever bought or sold a house, or you want to buy or sell a house, you're going to want to pay very close attention to this because some of these things may blow your mind in terms of some of the things that happen in the real estate industry. Why am I sharing it? A couple reasons. One, I am committed to pulling back the curtain on all the deceptive tactics that happen in the real estate industry. I truly think that we can raise the bar. There are phenomenal agents out there, but I always say, good agents are undervalued. Bad agents are overpaid. We know that the gene pool is shallow in certain spots. So we really want to shine light on the dark arts in real estate and make sure that we're protecting the herd. My name's Justin Konikow. I own Prime Real Estate with my incredibly intelligent and beautiful wife, Shannon. She is the brains of the organization. She is Ivy educated, systems operations. She is the CEO side of Prime. I am the CMO. My background is marketing and advertising. I specialize in branding, marketing, and sales. And more than anything, I'm not afraid to take out the trash. I've always been a guy that can do the work consistently over time. And I would argue I have an average intelligence level, but I can promise you that if you're able to do something consistently over time, you are going to be able to achieve incredible results because the world often will just not put in that consistent effort. What I like to do is give you some of those tips that you can do consistently over time and then hold you accountable. Easiest way to do that is hit that subscribe and that like button so you don't miss these live trainings. Go out and implement them and then jump into the comments and be part of the community. I don't do any coaching, so please don't DM me and ask me to do private coaching with you. What I do, though, is I give back to those people who show up. You would be shocked at some of the things that I do, from screen share, brand audits, to giving tips on how to succeed on YouTube, to helping people that are struggling in the real estate industry. If you show up for other people and you reach out in my community, maybe you'll get a little bit of one-on-one time with me. But like I said, I put really big parameters around my time and where I spend it. So I need to see you engaging with other people and helping the community. I don't even care if you help me at all. I just want to see you engaging and lifting others up. I think that's the most important thing that we can do. Good morning, Kim Farr. I see you hanging out. Tara Murney, you're awesome. I hope you're feeling better as well too. Sheila Santini, I see you. Good morning. It is a very important topic for realtors. Olivier Moraes, good morning. Nice to see you. Got sued once at the beginning of my career. Never want that to happen again. Well, that's great, as well as my camera shutting off. So give me 1 second. You guys are going to get a view of the studio without the fancy camera. So this is how things happen. Sometimes things don't go perfect and you just ride with it. So this is a great example for anybody that's terrified of going live on how you just modify. So this is another angle. This is just my laptop camera. You don't need fancy equipment. And this is my studio. So this is my gym / studio, my wall of greatness and things that inspire me surrounding me. I don't know if anybody's ever seen this angle before. Jump in the comments if you have, but let's get right into the topic. So Olivier made a point. He said, hey, I got sued in the real estate industry. I never want that to happen again. Often it happens that consumers or agents feel slighted in a transaction and it leads to legal ramifications. I'm really going to break down some of the ways that that can happen and how you can avoid that. And I have some interesting insights because over my career, I've done a few things. No, I haven't gotten sued 1,000 times. What I have done, though, is I've sat on the professional standards boards for close to 5 years now, which is where every single complaint comes in. And I get to sit there and work with a team of people, do the research on these cases, interview the people, the defendants, the people that are accusing the other person of infringing, and then suggest recommendations for the outcome to the disciplinary committee. I don't want to sit on the disciplinary committee. I want to be involved in the research and get my hands dirty because there's some super complex things that happen that are very basic that you would be shocked about end up in front of disciplinary. Here's a really simple example. Somebody books a showing at your house. You pack up with your entire family and leave for that showing. That agent never shows up. You come back to the house and you're like, it's exactly how I left it. You're like, I literally moved 3 kids, a dog, and cleaned the entire place for 2 hours. You call your agent, hey, did they show up? Your agent calls the other agent and finds out, no, actually, they were running late and they just never called. That's a problem. So if that complaint comes into the board, we actually instituted a fast fine scenario that is an escalating fine for that agent for not making the common courtesy of DMing or texting the agent to cancel or rebook the showing. So a simple way that somebody could have over communicated that is literally just sent a message while they're in the driveway. One of the best ways you can not get sued is over communicate with your people. Let's pretend you own a coffee shop and somebody gets burned, right? Or something happens. And again, I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice, but the way that you choose to interact with that person, the way that you've trained your staff to interact with that person, the way that you follow up with that person, the communication shows how much you actually care about your customers. We all talk about how much we care about our customers, but very rarely do we actually showcase that with our actions. So I would recommend you, homework for the week is sit down and start writing down some SOPs of how you handle the tough situations in your business. Like I said, this is based around real estate because that's what I have my black belt in, but you can do this in your industry. Write down maybe the 10 common hiccups that happen in your business and how you can help your consumer go through them. The second way that people get sued in our business quite often is misrepresentation of facts. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. I'm not an accountant. I don't play one on TV. I'm not an environmental auditor. I don't play one on TV. I can go on and on and on. Real estate agents like to pretend that they are way more important than they are. Our job is market intelligence, marketing, and negotiations. That is it. When it comes to giving advice, I can give you case studies and situations that I have seen and how they've worked out. But the second it comes to legal wording of a clause or any type of conflict between a buyer or a seller or something in a home inspection, we call in the professionals, right? Home inspectors have limited liability. So if you look at a home inspection report, for example, in there, it's going to say this is limited to a visual inspection. They can't start ripping out walls and discover everything about the property as much as we want them to. And when I buy real estate, I understand that there's an inherent risk in residential resale, depending on the age of the property, the condition, things are going to happen. Where the things go wrong is when the home inspector does the inspection, sends the report, the real estate agent reads the report and then tells the client everything's perfectly fine and doesn't get into any interpretation of the report. They close on the house. And then 3 months after, something happens that was in the report and the consumer feels like, hey, you didn't explain this to me. That's where things can get dicey, right? And if you're representing that everything's fine, that's an issue, right? So a simple way that you can solve this is just by having a process of sending them the report. I would argue even write an email template or a text message template that you use to tell your consumer or the client that you're working with to read through the report. Let's translate this into regular business, a contract for a coaching group that you run. Keep it super simple. Have a lawyer review it and create a one-page agreement of whatever that contract is. But tell the person that's signing it that they have an onus of care to actually read that contract, right? As a consumer, you should be reading every contract you sign. If you're signing a mortgage, you should be going into the details. And if there's things you do not understand, you should be writing down all of the things you do not understand and then booking a time to get clarity on those items. You may think that, well, I don't want to book my lawyer's time because it's expensive and it's going to end up putting me in dire straits that I got to pay an extra $2,000 in lawyer's fees. Well, if you think using a professional is expensive, you should see what using an amateur or not using one at all is going to cost you. So from both sides of the transaction, I would say making sure that you are not misrepresenting information on a property is super, super key. Here's another great example. If you're buying a property and there's a giant field behind you, and this is where I want to protect the herd. How often have you walked into an open house and that real estate agent's like, oh, it's beautiful. You're backing onto green space. You don't have to worry. Nothing's ever going to get developed back there. Have they actually done the research? Have they called the city? Have you called the city? Has your agent, this is why you want to use a buyer agent, gone to the extent of talking to that agent and getting something in writing, verifying that it's not going to be developed? Have they checked the city zoning map? Have they checked the official plan? Have they Googled the address and found out that that place was a grow up and there was a murder there, right? There's all these things that should be being done in the process, but quite often they don't happen because real estate agents and people in general don't use a system. They kind of just wake up and do what they do on a daily basis. The transactions happen and then it's not an issue till it is. So you probably do have a system. Your system might just be not having a system. So put a simple checklist in place of every time I'm doing a contract on a property, these are the things I'm checking, zoning, Googling the address, verifying with the agent. The next piece, actually, before I get to verification of information, I wanted to mention what I said in all of that tirade, documenting the conversations, right? So if you're talking with a client or a customer, or you're talking with another real estate agent, the second you're done that conversation, send an email. You have to document. People have very selective memories, especially when things start going sideways. If you're in partnership in business with somebody and you have a conversation with them about, this is how we're going to handle the disbursements of funds. If we sell the company, this is how we're going to go through it. If somebody else comes in, or it feel like you poached a client, this is how we're going to deal with it. If we're working on a file together and you ghost for a month, this is how we're going to deal with it. Don't just rely on your memory, because you are a human being. And I promise you, if you do, you're going to end up in some really sticky situations. So often, especially if we're getting into serious things, like I mentioned about green space behind the property, verifying information, we'll document everything. And then we'll actually have our client reach out to the city directly so that they can verify the information. I know it sounds onerous, but it's saved. I've killed so many deals over stuff that we find out in writing, or my client calls the city and they have a specific question outside of the purview of what they told me. And we were able to ascertain that because we approached it as a team effort, which goes to the next step that I was going to mention about avoiding getting sued. And it's verifying all the information that you're given. There's a wide variety of real estate agents out there. Not all of them are created equal. Not all of them are giving you accurate information. So I take everything with a grain of salt. And I expect everybody to let me down, not because I'm trying to be negative, but because I want to do my job right. So if somebody tells me something about zoning or future use of this property, hey, I bought this 25 unit apartment building, I can put 11 more units on it because this guy told me I could. Did you verify it? Right? I just gave you that toolkit. And it's literally just going into the city and finding out, hey, I was told this. Understanding the city is usually not going to give you a yes or no. But as you develop relationships with the city and the people that work there, if they understand how you're approaching things and you're being diligent, quite often they'll actually help you more than you think they would. And real estate it's not a stock, right? There's a balance of risk versus reward, but it's no different than any other investment. Sometimes people go into situations like this and the city would say something along the lines of, sure, that 25 unit building looks amazing. Yeah, we totally would support you adding 11 units. Look, you have other buildings around it that adhere to the same bylaws and you can apply for minor variance. And this is that process. They'll give you a certain confidence limit. But as I mentioned earlier, just like residential resale, there is an inherent risk in everything you do. You could walk out the house tomorrow and a meteor falls on that building. That's the reality of life, right? The next portion I'm going to go into why people get sued quite often in this business is failure of disclosing agency relationship. For consumers out there that are watching this, I think this is super important. There are two really big words in real estate: client and customer. And keep in mind, I'm in Canada, so this is based on Canadian real estate laws. I do collaborate nationally and globally. I'm one of the Serhant ambassadors, so I'm one out of 7 of over 15,000 members globally. I have no idea why he chose me, but hey. I also work with the McGilvery Group, and I work with the Ferry Organization, and I have agents all over the planet, but I'm speaking specifically to Canadian real estate law, so I'm not entirely sure if these two words are the same in the States. Make sure to ask your agents about this, but what you can ask them is agency relationship. Who is representing who in the transaction? A client means I have the same fiduciary of care as a lawyer or a doctor. If you tell me something, I have to put your interests above mine. The founding principle of my brokerage is do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. Easy to put on a logo on the wall, very difficult to put into practice when there's money and relationships involved. Not very difficult when you know that that is your core value. So when I explain agency relationships and I sign with sellers, quite often I explain to them that this is what is going to happen when a buyer comes to me directly and says, hey, you're going to make double commission. What's the best price I can get on this property? Or I want a discount because you're the listing agent. You're going to make double commission. The way that I approach that conversation is very different than it's been approached to me in the past. I have walked in to see real estate agents on deals, and they have flat out told me that their client would accept $200,000 to $400,000 less for that property than it's listed for. And this is what the consumers are terrified of. If you're a consumer and you think some real estate agents are shady, jump in the comments and tap shady. I'll be watching them in a second. I see a whole bunch of comments I will get to in a minute. If you're an agent and you've ever felt that, jump in the comments and let me know as well too. I mean, it's happened 3 times in the last week that I was talking with my team and using it as an example of like, hey, don't ever do this. Like if we are working out in the field and we're telling customers we're advertising a property for a certain price, we are advertising that property for that certain price. Super important to keep your core values and your mission front and center. I will tell my clients exactly what I think the property is going to sell for and the range of values that it's in. And there's different pricing strategies that are out there from a real estate standpoint. But when it comes to dealing with agency, I hold a client relationship in the highest regard, to the point where if a buyer comes to me and I feel like they're being unethical, I'll give away half my commission and send them to somebody else, or I'll sign them up as a customer. So I mentioned two words, client and customer. The customer relationship means you are not being represented in the same weight as a client. There's not the same fiduciary obligation, right? So a fiduciary obligation in a multiple representation situation is very, very, very specific about what can be shared and what can't be shared. Multiple representation actually takes away some of the ability to negotiate and say, I think they'll take this for this property. If I say that, I've broken my code of ethics and I should lose my real estate license tomorrow, right? So client, customer, two very important words to keep separate. Just an asterisk to that. In multiple representation, they're not neutralized, but there's a different set of rules that happens if that client wants to come direct to me to deal with me because I'm the listing agent. And it does happen sometimes. Maybe I'm working with a buyer for 3 years and then I list the perfect property for them and they want to work with me because they know, like, and trust me. What I do in that situation to avoid getting sued is I'm fair, honest, and transparent. I give them both the exact same set of data, the both same framework and tools. And I truly believe my customers and clients are smart enough in order to interpret that information given the right framework. But again, if you are somebody that feels like they do not have, say, an aptitude in real estate, and I don't even like using the word smart, I just want to mean experienced in certain situations. If you do truly need that client relationship, make sure you're working with somebody from a client agency perspective or a seller client agency perspective. Another note that I'll make is investors. I saw a TikTok yesterday that kind of made me smile. I was going to respond to it, but I didn't because I didn't want the agent to feel one way or another about it. And they said, big investors won't sign a buyer agency agreement, right? And a buyer agency agreement means you are shopping with me for this property in this market. It's telling me that you are exclusively using me. So if I put in all of my time and effort, I'm going to get paid. Even if you're at a party and Uncle Jimmy brings you a listing and you tell Uncle Jimmy, I'm working with Justin, he's going to show it to me. That's fine. Uncle Jimmy's not going to be upset about that. But if Uncle Jimmy brings you a property, I don't have a buyer contract with you. I've been showing you houses for 3 years and you go see the property with Uncle Jimmy and put a contract on it. This is where agents get really frustrated in the business with consumers. And they're like, I can't believe they did that. I'm like, well, you didn't have them under buyer contract and you didn't show them that property. So you got to take ownership of that. And that's your fault as an agent. On the consumer side, if you're working with somebody and they explain to you, you want their skill set, you want them to work for you, buyer agency is something they require, treat them like a professional. Because quite often when we do buyer agency agreements, we're establishing rapport and relationships with people and saying, this is how we operate. We're a professional real estate company. A professional service requires a contract. This contract protects you and holds me to the same standard. The ones that get it, and they have no issue with it. The investor conversation is an interesting one because investors will go into a city and say, I'll just work with whoever brings me the deal. And I'm like, totally fine. I understand that. FYI, when I find a great off-market deal, I can sell it to any investor I want. So when investors think agents are a dime a dozen, we could turn around and say investors are a dime a dozen because if the deal is good enough, I can sell it to anybody. If my system is good enough where you want access to my network, you want access to my service providers, you want access to my market intelligence, my research division, my property managers, the people that can help you with design and renovations, it's taken me a decade to build that and hundreds of thousands of dollars of resources, my time, leaving my family on weekends to collaborate with Scott McGilvery at huge investment conferences. Like, our name holds a lot of weight. And if you don't see the value in that, not a problem at all. We actually have a general mailing list where we'll send you some good information and we'll send you even interpretations of deals we think are great deals on the market. And we can go to that step. I'm fully aware in many situations, I send those mass emails and you take the listing and go to Uncle Jimmy and do that deal. I've seen it happen. It is what it is. We didn't show it to you. So or we did show it to you, but we didn't physically call you on it and make the connection. Sure. I'll just blame myself for that. But here's where the agency piece comes in. And this is the most important thing. When it comes to agency, if I get an off-market deal, right, and you're that investor that says, I don't want to sign a buyer rep with you, I just want your AAA deals. And I sit down with Kim Walsh Phillips and she has a buyer agency agreement signed with me. And I send you both that deal at the same time, which is what you want, right? Because you're the big bad investor and you want access to all my best deals, but you won't sign an agency agreement. And Kim is family, and she did. And I send it to both of you at the same time. I am in breach of my code of ethics because she is a client. I have a fiduciary duty to Kim to send her that AAA deal first. And if she says she doesn't want it, amazing. I'll send you my leftovers. So I'm going to leave it at that. That is the biggest thing that you need to think about. And if you want the leftovers and you don't want to work with somebody that has a great system and can bring more value than they take, totally fine. There's a great ecosystem for that. And if you're investing at a high level, what I can tell you is I have investors that once we have earned that relationship, they don't always necessarily need to sign buyer's representation agreements. I know they're doing deals all over the place in Southwestern Ontario, but we have that earned trust and that implied agency so that they can get access to my AAA deals because that fiduciary duty of care and that trust has been built. But this world is all about relationship building. It is so important to give more than you take, to understand the dynamics and the importance of representation and taking care of each other, but then treat your business like an actual business. Take it serious. The real estate industry drives me bananas because there is no standard of care, right? These things are in place. The level of education as to some of the things I explained is not. I am trying to increase the level of education in the industry. I'm not trying to rag on anybody for business practices or how they do things. I love digging into these things, actually more for myself than anybody else, so that when I end up in these situations, I know the solutions and I know the answers. As a leader at Prime, that is my goal, right? I want my team and the people that work with me to have access to the very best information so that they can go out there and be the very best version of themselves. So they don't have to sit in hours and hours of professional standards meetings. And I want to give it to my community as well. It's why I run this YouTube channel. There's a few things that I do on this channel that are very exclusive to this network. I have a weekly mailing list that I send out my mindset of the week. So I actually share it with my team internally, what I'm really focusing on. This has to do with the state of the world as it is, how we're succeeding in business. And we link you up with amazing people on the Prime People podcast, all the live trainings. If you want access to all that stuff, the easiest way to do it is actually go to justinkonikow.com/resources. I'll drop that actually at the bottom here. Let me just see. Here we go. justinkonikow.com/resources. You just fill this out. It'll get you on my weekly newsletter and you'll get access to a Google Drive. I am not fancy at all, but I built out these PDFs on live trainings I've done in the past. So if you want to learn how I create and schedule my content, click on this, fill this out. You'll get access to this, how I time block my schedule, getting started with YouTube. Christina Smallhorn, Ken Pozek, Levi Latzik, and some other killers were on and actually broke down some massive secrets when it comes to YouTube. Kyle Scott, the CEO of Serhant Ventures, came on and talked about storytelling and building a brand. If you think Ryan Serhant's built a big brand, then go read this one, Maximum Productivity and Creativity. This is a daily planner I built. And then if you're an agent and you want to know how to run the perfect open house, there's a free PDF there. But honestly, the reason that I do this is nobody did it for me when I got in the business. So I want to make our community better. I also realize that there's a lot of entrepreneurs and people that run businesses and are not in the real estate industry. So I really try to provide a lot of information that you can look at through the lens of a real estate agent. But remember, this page and this channel is all about branding, marketing, and sales in that order. It's not super complicated. I hope you got some value. If you did, hit the subscribe, the like button, share this with somebody that you think would appreciate it. Jump over to Clubhouse and we're going to do some live Q&A for about a minute or two, and then we're going to pass it on. Thanks again for showing up for the training.